I'm proud of the people of Washington. They're worth working for and they're worth fighting for.
It's a question many of us think about. Dan Evans will tell you he's thought about it.
I, Daniel J. Evans,
do solemnly swear.
How do we want to be remembered? How does he?
I'd just like to be remembered as leaving Washington a better state than when I started. I first ran for governor in 1964.
As of now, I will be a candidate for the governor of the state of Washington.
He ran again in 1968.
Hi, nice to see you, Dan Evans.
And 1972.
I am running again for governorship of our state.
And won. 3 times he won. And Dan Evans won the hearts and minds of Washington state voters. He served an unprecedented 3 consecutive terms as governor, passed up a 4th chance because of family.
Because I love my family so much, I will end this term as governor and not seek re-election.
Dan Evans would go on to serve as U.S. Senator, and after he left public office, he served as president of Evergreen State College.
He spent his entire life in public service. I mean, when you think about forward thinking, he was talking about an income tax. He was talking about a regional transportation system.
I propose that we establish a Department of Transportation to deal with the problems of moving people and goods from one place to another.
Creating the Department of Social and Health Services, creating the community college system.
He cared desperately about the beauty of the state. He started the first ecology department in our state, which became the model for the EPA. The environment will be key to his legacy.
We'll do a selfie with the 2 of us.
Yeah.
John Wilson worked for him 40 years ago when Dan Evans was the chair of the Northwest Power Planning Council.
You know, there are so many things in this state that frankly are directly attributable to Dan's legacy and Dan's initiative. The Shoreline Protection Act, a lot of the wildlife areas that we've set aside.
He started a commission for American Indians. He started a women's council. I mean, you know, these were things at a time when it was unheard of.
No wonder. Dan Evans has been recognized as one of the 10 outstanding governors of the 20th century.
I think the lesson that Dan gave all of the governors was be true to your conviction. Don't worry about political consequences. Do what is right for the people. And if you keep the people first and foremost, politics will take care of itself.
He is a proud Republican in a state that is known to be not Republican.
This Republican likes to say, not all good ideas come from one side of the political aisle.
And really, I went on to say that I've never seen a Democratic highway or a Republican school. These, you know, they have to be done together. And that's where the big successes have been.
And that's where I think Dan was so great. He was always pulling people together. You would never know what party people were.
He believed that education was the tool to get us to greater equity, to get us to economic development, to get us to the future. And that is what I love about his association with the University of Washington.
Honestly, when they named the school after him, he was surprised.
Usually they wait till you're dead to do that.
To honor this extraordinary public servant who graduated with an engineering degree from the University of Washington, the Graduate School of Public Affairs, which was founded in 1962, was renamed the Daniel J. Evans School of Public Affairs in 1999.
I was born in 1991. So, and a lot of the students I'm classmates with were born in the late 90s even, and so it makes me want to go back and learn, what did this guy do? What was he about?
In 2015, the school was renamed again, the Daniel J. Evans School of Public Policy and Governance.
Now I'm happy because that name more accurately describes our purpose. And I was always ambivalent about that old name since I really felt that affairs ought to be private rather than public. So.
You know, what's cool about the Evans School is that we bring people from across the world to Seattle to study about public policy. And I think what we're being known for is this kind of rigor about analysis and understanding policy problems and solutions, but we're also known for having a heart. And to me, that's really what's special about the namesake that we have, because I think Dan Evans was somebody who knew about rigor, and he had a heart.
And it's only fitting that there is a public policy institute at the University of Washington named after Dan Evans.
And I am still proud to wear the Evans School t-shirt.
A lot to be proud of here. Starting in the 2010s, the Evans School began moving higher in the national rankings.
Worn by those great students who did so much to preserve this school.
In the early 2020s, it was consistently top 5 among all public policy graduate programs and one of the top public institutions.
I don't think it'll be very long before even U.S. News recognizes that this is really the best school in the country.
And you joke that you want to live long enough to see that.
Absolutely. No, I don't want it to take until I'm 122, but...
Dan Evans was 96 when we sat down with him for this interview.
You know, Dan, isn't this really a wonderful dinner? Aren't you glad we're here?
Well, sure. At my age, I'm glad to be anywhere.
It's crazy, actually. We were at a football game together this fall, and they were walking just as fast as my husband and I, and we're half their age.
You know, look, on this job, I have some very long days. And there are moments when, you know, I get a little sorry for myself and whatever. And then you see Dan, and he's out there, and he's the Energizer Bunny, and he's doing this, and he's doing that. And, you know, it's inspirational.
Dan is definitely not slowing down. I mean, I hear that he's still going hiking and taking treks through the woods. A few years ago, he did almost a 50-mile hike around, I think, the Pacific Crest or around Mount Rainier. This guy is amazing.
To know him...
Are you soured on politics?
Oh, heavens no.
...is to know that he's had a lifelong commitment to the people of Washington State.
And that's what you hope, that your service led to some ideas that made people better off.
Hi, Governor.
Hi.
It's great to meet you.
Good to see you.
My name's Xavier.
Xavier?
Hetto. I'm first year at the Evans School.
Terrific.
I look up to him quite a bit. I think he is a great example of what can be possible if you are not afraid to work across the aisle and be pragmatic in what you need to do and serve the people above all else.
He did so much for this state, and I think really exemplified the service aspect of public service, and that leadership isn't just about having your name on a bunch of events or titles or anything like that, but really serving the people.
To have access to this man whose fingers were in so many decisions. You know, if you look at the map, large parts of the Olympic National Park have Dan Evans' name on them. And that's an amazing thing.
Dan Evans did a lot of amazing things. Former Governor Gary Luck.
Really welcoming Vietnamese refugees into our state when so many states were turning them away.
You can ask France Wong about that. France and his family were among thousands of Vietnamese refugees who came to live in Washington State after the Vietnam War. France was just 20 months old.
We were in Camp Pendleton, California. Governor Evans, of course, sent a representative down there with a very clear message, which is, you're welcome here in Washington. And so my family, among tens of thousands, settled in Washington State because of his generous message.
The West Point grad, who feels fortunate to have met Dan Evans, is paying it forward with his volunteer work helping Afghan refugees.
Myself and a group of veterans organized the very first private charter evacuation flight out of Afghanistan and helped bring a plane, the first plane of Afghan allies out after the U.S. left. And on that plane were 380 passengers, 93 families, 152 children. And I'll tell you, looking at those families, in every single one I saw a reflection of my own family escaping Saigon in 1975.
No question Dan Evans would be proud of France's public service. For the former governor, it's always been about public service.
But at 32, you must...
I'm 31.
31? I'm sorry.
Just ask his wife, Nancy, who's had a front row seat to it all.
All the things he's done have been well thought out. It's what he wanted to do. They haven't been haphazard. They haven't been wild. They've been practical.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah. We're speaking generally.
Yeah.
Dan Evans's political philosophy can best be summed up in this famous Dan Evans quote.
I would rather cross the political aisle than cross the people, and that got quoted more often than almost anything else I said in that speech. But you know, I really believe that.
And he believes his life has been blessed in so many ways. He writes about it in his autobiography.
Governor, thanks so much. You
Yeah.
put a date on that one for me?
Oh, sure.
Could I trouble you to sign my book?
Of course.
Thank you.
I was leaving to come to this event, and a classmate stopped me. He's like, "What's that book you're carrying?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Dan Evans' autobiography." He's like, "Is that the guy who this school's named after?" And so, you know, I think people are starting to realize, like, this person did a lot for our state, and if we go back and look at it, a lot of the things we get to enjoy now as being Washingtonians, he was a part of creating.
I think he writes so well. I just think it's a great story. I'm very proud of it.
First line of his book, when one man, for whatever reason, has the opportunity to lead an extraordinary life, he has no right to keep it to himself. Lucky us that he was willing to share his life, his wisdom with others, and now with our future leaders.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I've thoroughly enjoyed my time at the school so far.
The students at the Daniel J. Evans School of Public Policy and Governance.
Well, you're about at the end of the quarter, aren't you? That's the best part of your life. You're learning. You've still got a long period ahead of you.
I think Dan Evans is so motivated to see how young people are trying to engage in the problems of the day and develop solutions. I mean, it's what he did.
Dan, thanks for your incredible years of service to our state.
Dan Evans, thank you for being so generous and courageous.
Dan, thank you so much for being there for me.
Thank you, Governor Evans, for not just what you've done, but for who you are.
Dan Evans, thank you for all you taught me, for the wisdom you provided me.
You have been our best governor.
I think his legacy is one of effective governance, solving problems, and that is ultimately what any institution of higher education focused on policy needs to be about these days.
You have to invent how you're going to do things because, you know, like everybody else, time rolls on and you're facing new circumstances and new challenges all the time. And it's what happens and how you deal with them.
And you hope you've made the right decision.
And not always, but...
Well, you always hope you did.
You know, I always hope you did, of course. Yeah.